So I'm going to start with passing around last year's Christmas card. It says a picture of my wife and my 3 daughters. Just to kind of let you know where I am today, and just give you an overview. Just like to talk about kind of where I am today, and then do a history of my career and lessons learned along the way, and things I look for in candidates when I evaluate job candidates, and why I chose insurance. So that's going to be the kind of the sequence of this evening's discussion. Today, I have been married almost 21 years. Come June 8th will be 21 years to my wife, Donna. I mentioned my daughters, Michaela, 15, who's already been to Houghton. Erica, who's sitting in the back room with us. Give a little wave, Erica, who's 13. That was a very little wave. And Angela will be 11 in 2 weeks. And I am now the president of the Northwest Connecticut YMCA. And I'm also on the advisory council for the Harleysville Insurance Company and the Hartford Insurance Company. So there's been a few, as you say, I'm a busy guy, and things have continued even since the bio. I am glad to be here tonight. As you mentioned, if it wasn't for Houghton College, I wouldn't be here because of where my parents lived in the state of New York. Barring God's providence, they would have never met, and I would not be here at all. So I really, truly am glad to be here tonight. And I'm also glad to be with you because 25 years ago, I was sitting where you are now. And at the time, I was president of Gamma Iota Sigma, which is a national professional insurance fraternity. And I would do exactly this kind of thing, where I would arrange to have senior vice presidents and presidents come from all different aspects of the insurance industry. And undergrads and MBA students alike would come and have a chance to hear them and learn about international marketing and claims and finance and so forth. So I applaud what you're doing, and I compliment you for doing this, because if you don't do an internship program or you don't do something like this, you don't develop contacts, for when you graduate, and you don't really have a sense as to what you're getting into. So I'm glad to be here and on this side of the microphone, because it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that I was sitting where you are now. So I'm going to go way back, because way back is really where the first influence in my life started. My mother was a graduate of Houghton in 1956. She got her master's degree and half of her doctorate degree in education. My father graduated from Syracuse, although they met here. He graduated from Syracuse and went on to work for the Travelers Insurance Company. So things were going along fine until little Stephen came along and his younger sister, Sharon. At which time, my mother, who minored in child psychology along with her education major, knew that it was very important for young children to have mom home during those formative years. It helps establish a sense of well-being and confidence, and that was God's original design, and it made a huge difference for me that I'll always be grateful for. And it was a huge sacrifice financially. And we lived in an upscale community, in upscale suburbs, where 90+% of the families were dual income. So I grew up not having a lot of the luxuries and the niceties that most of my friends had. And that was okay. But one day when I asked my father for, I can't even remember what it was, he said, well, you're 11 years old. You want that particular thing? You can go out and earn it. So I did. And I needed that little push to do that. So I thought about my various options and talked to some of my neighbors I knew and asked if they would be interested in someone that would do their lawn mowing for them. And I got enough yeses that I said, okay, I'm going to borrow $200 and buy my first Lawn Boy 24-inch lawnmower, and went into the lawn mowing, leaf raking, pretty much anything, babysitting even the first couple of years to earn some money. And as time went by, I became more refined in my approach and narrowed it to grass cutting and leaf blowing and mulching and landscaping. And those little white 3x5 cards, they still have those, a little pink line across the top. Some of you older folks here might remember those, and I would neatly print my name, address, phone number, and a list of jobs that I was willing to do. In the back side, I had their neighbors and their phone numbers once I asked for their permission and learned how to market myself. And so they would see their neighbors as references. And initially, I had to undercut the market because I had no reputation. I had to charge 80 or 90% of what the professionals charged. But as a couple of years went by, I was able to charge full price. And I didn't have overhead like taxes and insurance, things like that. All I had was gasoline cost, and I would take care of my own machine because I only had one machine. And that early business owner process, and it really was a business. I had several lawns. I had employees or independent contractors. They had their own equipment because I only had one lawnmower. And learned a lot about how to, as I said, market yourself, be responsible, be dependable, learn how to cater to high-end clientele in this upscale suburb. They wanted their grass cut just so, their bushes cut just so. But you know what? If you did it just so and you worked hard and you were dependable, you could make a lot of money as a young kid. And the tips were great. You know, you had to learn how to work the tips. You know. So I had a great time with that and tried a few other things. Learned early that conglomerates don't usually work unless there's some synergies or, you know, and I don't have the time to get into that tonight, but tried a few other ventures as well. Before realizing it made more sense to build on one of my core strengths, and that was reputation in the community and my customer lists. And so I did what many businesses do. I broadened my product offering. Specifically, I got into snow removal, and I paid for that in cash and earned back the money in 2 months. It was a good ROI, and made money on that machine for many years afterwards. And I just gave it away 2 years ago to a family with 6 kids. They're all homeschooling and one income. And these teenage boys desperately needed a way to clear the driveway. So my wife couldn't pull it to start it anyway, so I had to get an electric start. But that served me very, very well, and thought I was going to become a landscaper. I really did, until one very hot summer afternoon, about 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. It was my 3rd lawn I'd cut that day. It was 100 degrees, almost 100% humidity. There's a reason why tobacco's been grown in Connecticut for almost 400 years. It's hot in the summertime. And I still remember sitting on my neighbor's front step, looking over at my house, drinking that ice water, feeling like I've been run over. And 2 vehicles came up the road. The first one was a beat-up old pickup truck, a little rust, a few dents, and the windows down, and the guy looked, you know, sweat-streaked and soaked, and he looked like I felt. And you know, made that observation. And right behind him was a guy in a BMW. Windows were up, air conditioning was obviously on, looking just as crisp and fresh as if he'd stepped out that morning. And I said, you know, there's something to using your mind over your body. And right then I had an epiphany. You already have that figured out. That's why you're here in higher education. So again, I applaud you. But I, at that point, decided it was time to move on. Now, I wasn't sharp enough to sell my business. That's one of my few regrets. Should have sold it. It had some worth. But I gave it to those employees and let them take over so they could make sure they took care of my customers. And I tried getting into the retail side of business. And I started in the stock room and quickly was promoted to the cashier. And just for the sake of fun, the cash registers back then were not these nice little boop and tell you what the amount was and so forth. Oh no, you had 5-digit codes that you had to memorize, and there were hundreds of products in the store. And they had cheat sheets, but if someone comes with like 15 or 20 things, you can't be looking up every one of them. You had to memorize a couple hundred 5-digit codes. And you had to be talking with them as you're remembering these codes. And you didn't have these nice soft-touch little keypads. Oh no, this is... I had bruises on the end of my fingertips from how hard you had to push. And there was no telling you what the change was. You had to count it back mentally and do the change in your head. You do that a couple of times, no big deal. You do that for a full shift for 8 hours. That's another story altogether, all the while with a smile on your face, making the patrons feel welcome, chatting them up, and so forth. And I did well. I took pride in that. I think it was only less than 5 times that my drawer didn't come out to the penny. But it was limiting, and I wasn't able to work the tips, which I like to do, and be out in the public, and it was kind of stale. So I realized that I needed to get out of that. Got into restauranting. Started as a busboy, paid my dues. Worked up to being a waiter and then a host. Enjoyed that for my latter part of my high school and early college years. And I'm going to take a little sidebar now, because I don't want you to think that all I did was work. I worked very hard, and that work ethic has served me very well throughout my life. But I also played a lot of sports, just for the sake of interaction, out of curiosity. How many have played football? Any football players in here? All right. 5 years of football, defensive linebacker, mostly quarterback. How about baseball? Any baseball players? A couple baseball players? 6 years of baseball, shortstop, third, usually pitcher. How about basketball? Basketball players? Okay. Played 9 years of teams in basketball and actually played for UConn men's basketball in '83 and '84. Best game was 26 points, not bad. Of course, it was at a branch and not at the store's campus, but hey, I can still say I played for UConn men's basketball, and it was a great experience. Tennis, racquetball, you got racquetball courts here, I saw. squash, paddle tennis, anything like that was great. How about weightlifters? Any weightlifters? Couple? All right. When I was your age, I could bench 325, squat 365, and deadlift 550, weighing 200 pounds. Not bad for all natural. And how about runners? My last question. Any runners? Joggers? Okay, couple? All right. I've done 74 half marathons. I don't keep track of the shorter races, but suffice it to say, sports have been a big part of my life. I've been very competitive. I'm still very competitive. And that has served me well by teaching me a lot of life skills, how to win, how to lose, how to be a good sport, how to work at something that you weren't instantly good at. That's something that a lot of very gifted people struggle with. Things come to you so readily and easily, you don't really have to work hard at something. When you are challenged, it's very easy to say, I can't do that. Well, a lot of things in life are not going to come to you like that. And learning how to work at something and to be patient with yourself and learn how to become better at something over time, I learned in sports, and that has served me very well professionally as well. So I didn't just work. All work and no play makes Stephen a dull boy. So I did a lot of sports, and I look for that when I interview candidates. I look for sports involvement. I look for jobs that they did growing up, during school, and so forth. So moving on back to junior year in college. I was very frustrated. I wanted to get into an internship program that was meaningful, and the only options were like file clerk, and it was like, oh man, come on, it's got to be something. And I was frustrated, and I was at a social function and began talking with a nice gentleman that seemed to take an interest in me and asked about my background and grades and area of study and focus, and little did I know he was a senior vice president of Travelers. And so I expressed my frustration to him, and he said, really, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I'd like to get into something involving technology or programming. I was an MIS minor, I was a psych minor, I was a business major, became an insurance minor as well. I want to use my knowledge, I want to make a difference, I want to be challenged, I want something hard. And evidently I said enough things that he went and created an internship program for me in the financial department for the home office of the Travelers. Top floor, 20 years old. And amongst doing some programming in Lotus 123, for those of you with tech backgrounds, you can look, see some smiles. You look in the history books of when that was, using macros and so forth. But I also helped